Number 8. The MV Alta. In early 2020, a strong extratropical cyclone named Storm Dennis swept across Western Europe. It came almost immediately after another destructive storm called Ciara, making things even worse in regions that were already experiencing catastrophic flooding like Ireland and the United Kingdom. In County Cork, Ireland, the strong wind pushed a ghost ship around near the coastal fishing town of Ballycotton. Known as the MV Alta, it came to rest on the rocks lining the shore. Built in 1976, the 262-foot-long vessel sailed under multiple names throughout its career as a merchant vessel. It was manned in 2018 near Bermuda, where its crew had to be rescued by the U.S. Coast Guard after running into problems during a trip from Greece to Haiti. It lost power and spent 20 days drifting in the Caribbean Sea while the crew tried to fix the problem, but they ultimately abandoned the ship thanks to an oncoming hurricane. Between then and its reappearance thousands of miles away in Ireland during Storm Dennis, the Alta was last seen in 2019 by a British Royal Naval ship in the Atlantic Ocean. The wrecked vessel quickly became a popular attraction for photographers and urban explorers who were able to board the old ship and explore it after it washed up. Some claiming to be a representative of the Alta's owner reportedly came forward recently and tried to claim the wreck, but it has remained at the crash site with an uncertain future. It has since deteriorated to the point where the Cork County Council fears it will break apart, and they are currently deciding whether to leave it as is, tow it out to sea, or dismantle it entirely for scrap. Number 7. HMS Resolute. The British Royal Navy ship HMS Resolute was built for sailing in the Arctic. In 1853, it set out to find a missing explorer named Sir John Franklin and his crew, who had disappeared 7 years before while searching for a sea route between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans known as the Northwest Passage. As luck would have it, the Resolute got trapped in ice off northern Canada, leaving its crew helpless as it drifted 1.7 miles east every day. After waiting out the winter, they decided to abandon ship in spring of 1854 and embarked on a treacherous march across the ice to reach another expedition point at Beechy Island. In the meantime, the Resolute broke free from the ice and started drifting. Over a year later, in September 1855, the crew of an American whaling ship called the George Henry spotted the Resolute off Baffin Island coast in northern Canada, about 1,200 miles from where it first got stuck in the ice. The U.S. Congress bought the ship for $40,000 with plans to refit it and return it to England as a gesture of national courtesy. In 1856, U.S. Navy Commander Henry J. Hartstein sailed the Resolute to England and presented it as a gift to Queen Victoria. It remained in British waters serving the Royal Navy until 1879, when it was finally retired and salvaged for timber. Some of the vessel's wood was used to build a desk that now actually sits in the Oval Office at the White House. Number 6. Mary Celeste. Built in Nova Scotia, Canada during the mid-19th century, the Mary Celeste was a two-masted merchant vessel called a brigantine. It ran aground during a storm one day in 1867 and was abandoned by its owners before falling into American hands and undergoing a major renovation. In late 1872, the 103-foot-long ship set sail from New York Harbor heading to Genoa, Italy, under the command of Captain Benjamin S. Briggs. Also on board were his wife, Sarah, and their 2-year-old daughter, as well as 8 crew members. Less than a month later, the captain of a British brigantine called De Gratia spotted a ship moving strangely in choppy seas at full sail about 400 miles east of the Azores. It turned out to be the Mary Celeste. Nobody was on deck and the captain's signals weren't answered. Crew members from the De Gratia soon boarded the vessel and found no sign of the captain, his family, or the crew. A lifeboat was missing and there was a few feet of water in the hold, but the ship was otherwise undamaged and stocked with 6 months' worth of provisions. The logbook's last entry was dated 9 days earlier, and there were no obvious signs of anything wrong. By all appearances, the ship had been evacuated in an orderly fashion. But why is the burning question? It's a mystery that remains unanswered to this day. At the time, maritime law dictated that a salvor could get a generous cut of the assessed value of a rescued vessel and its cargo. Eager to cash in, the De Gratia brought the derelict Mary Celeste to Gibraltar, where an investigation found no evidence of any foul play despite countless rumors and allegations of an alcohol-fueled mutiny, violence at the hands of the De Gratia's crew, and plots to commit insurance fraud. The judge seems to have sided with these beliefs and awarded them 1/5 of the total value of the ship and its cargo. Number 5. The Carroll A. Deering. Built in Maine in 1918, the 5-masted cargo schooner known as the Carroll A. Deering transported coal and other goods between the United States, South America, and regions of the Caribbean. It had been operating for only a few years when it ran into trouble off the North Carolina coast in 1921 while heading to Norfolk, Virginia from Brazil. While sailing past Cape Lookout, a crew member used a megaphone to tell a lightship keeper that the ship had lost both its anchors during a brutal storm. He asked the keeper to pass the word on to the ship's owner, and that was the last anyone ever heard of the Carroll A. Deering's crew. Just 3 days later, a surfman found the vessel grounded off Cape Hatteras, an area notorious for shipwrecks, nicknamed the Graveyard of the Atlantic. The weather was still bad, and it took rescue ships days to reach the Deering. They were confused to find not a single person on board. The crew's logbook, personal belongings, and lifeboats were also missing. It was evident that they abandoned the ship in the middle of preparing for the next day's meal, indicating that something had gone majorly wrong. The ship's rudder was also disengaged from its stock, and the steering wheel was completely shattered. After failing to salvage the Carroll A. Deering, the Coast Guard declared the ship a navigational hazard and decided to blow it up with dynamite. To this day, nobody knows what happened to the vessel's crew. Some believe that pirates or communists kidnapped them. Others blame bad weather, but we'll probably never know the truth. What do you think happened to the Deering? Let us know in the comments down below, and be sure to subscribe to the channel if you like what you've seen so far. Number 4. The 21 Friends. In 1872, a group of 21 Philadelphia Quakers paid for the construction of a 3-masted schooner, which they lovingly named the 21 Friends. While transporting a load of timber from Georgia to Philly in 1885 under Captain John Jeffries, the vessel was rammed by another ship off Cape Hatteras, North Carolina, an area notorious for shipwrecks. Jeffries sent out an order to abandon ship, leaving the 21 Friends and its cargo to the mercy of the sea. While his decision to put the crew's safety first was appropriate, Jeffries apparently underestimated the ship's overall resiliency. During the next 2 years, the 21 Friends was spotted on both sides of the Atlantic before finally grounding on a shore in Ireland. The cargo was then salvaged, and the ship was turned into a fishing vessel. It remained in service for many years to come and was finally retired in 1914. Number 3. Zebrina. Launched in 1873, the 189-ton 3-masted schooner Zebrina was designed with the intent to transport meat from the Rio de la Plata estuary located between Argentina and Uruguay. But the 100-foot vessel's slow speed and lack of refrigeration made this task extremely difficult, so its owners decided to use it for shorter trading trips in the Mediterranean and throughout Europe instead. On September 15, 1917, the Zebrina left Cornwall, England for Saint-Brieuc in northwestern France with a cargo full of coal. 2 days later, it was discovered ashore at Resolute Point near Cherbourg. Thanks to its flat bottom, there was no actual damage to the hull, and the ship itself was in fairly good shape besides some slight damage to the rigging. The lifeboat was in place, the galley fire was still burning, and the dinner table was set up and ready for 5 people, and the crew's personal belongings were still on board, along with the logbook, which had no suspicious entries. But the captain and 23 crew members were nowhere in sight, and their disappearance remains unsolved even to this day. One popular theory suggests that they were captured by the crew of a nearby German U-boat. This is entirely plausible considering World War I was in full swing, and an Allied vessel had recently reported seeing a U-boat in the area. The Zebrina was also carrying more crew members than usual. For this reason, the Germans may have classified it as an armed merchant ship when they otherwise would have left it alone. It'd be odd that the Germans didn't damage or sink the ship, but it's possible that they came under an Allied threat while carrying out the abduction and decided to leave the area as soon as possible. Other theories suggest the crew was somehow swept off the ship or victimized by an ancient sea monster. The Zebrina was eventually towed to Portsmouth, where it was set on fire in Velder Creek. Today, it's most likely buried by reclaimed land with a housing estate on top of it. Although it's out of sight, it hasn't been totally forgotten, especially among those who still hope to find answers about the captain and crew's mysterious fates. Number 2. Governor Parr. Built in 1918, the 200-foot-long 4-masted schooner Governor Parr was historically named after John Parr, a British military officer who became an early governor for Nova Scotia. At the time it was built, the ship was claimed to be the most handsome schooner in Atlantic Canada. Sadly, its glory was short-lived. Only 5 years later, in 1923, the Governor Parr met a rough storm in the North Atlantic while carrying lumber from Nova Scotia to Buenos Aires. The ship lost several crucial pieces, including its mizzen and spanker, and took on significant damage to its masts and deck. Captain Angus Richard and one crew member were killed that day, and their survivors were rescued by another ship. Multiple attempts to tow or destroy the Governor Parr failed, and the vessel was eventually abandoned for good. Sightings continued for multiple years throughout the Atlantic though, with the drifting vessel being spotted as far away as the Canary Islands, posing a navigational hazard to other ships but serving as a testament to the quality craftsmanship of its original builders. Number 1. The MV Joyita. The 69-foot-long MV Joyita, or Little Jewel, was built in 1931 to be a wooden luxury yacht for American film director Roland West, who lovingly named the boat after his wife. During World War II, it answered the call of duty and entered into service as a Naval Yard patrol vessel. After the war, the Joyita fell back into private ownership and was chartered off as a trading and fishing boat. In 1951, it left Samoa for the Tokelau Islands with one working engine, a load of medical supplies, an oil drum, food, and other cargo. By then, Joyita was already running a day late thanks to mechanical problems, and the vessel's 16 crew members and 9 passengers were eager to get moving. The 270-mile trip was expected to take just 2 days or less, but the Joyita failed to show up at its destination on time. Nobody received a distress call from the crew, and a search and rescue mission failed to turn up any sign of the missing ship. 5 weeks later, the captain of a merchant ship spotted the Joyita about 600 miles from its scheduled route. It was partially submerged, and its captain, crew, and passengers had disappeared, along with the majority of the cargo. All of the lifeboats were gone too. There was a bit of structural damage, and the radio was tuned into an international distress channel. But there was a break in its cable that would have put the radio's range at only 2 miles, which is why nobody heard a distress call. The starboard deck was covered with mattresses, and there were blood-covered bandages lying near a bag of medical equipment. Considering the poor condition the Joyita was in, it wasn't surprising that it encountered problems at sea. But the vessel was extra buoyant, thanks to its cork-lined holds, so there was little chance of it sinking fully, and the decision to abandon ship made little sense to investigators. The missing occupants were never found, so their fate is a mystery. One theory suggests that the captain was injured or incapacitated, that he was unable to tell the passengers and crew that the safest bet was to remain on the waterlogged vessel. To this day, everyone is still simply listed as missing.
8. Project Habakkuk. Project Habakkuk was the brainchild of Geoffrey Pike, a well-known English inventor and journalist. Pike was close personal friends with John Desmond Bernal, the Irish scientist who developed X-ray crystallography. The two men worked together at Combined Operations Headquarters, and based on the work he'd done, Pike was considered a genius by British naval officer Lord Mountbatten. While in the US organizing the production of M29 Weasels, a tracked vehicle designed for the snow, Pike came up with the idea to build a warship out of an iceberg. At the time, resources like aluminum and steel were hard to come by, and when they were available, they were required for more projects. In order to protect Atlantic convoys and seaborne landings that were out of reach of aircraft cover, Pike decided that the answer was ice. He proposed that either an artificial or natural iceberg should be hollowed out to shelter aircraft, and that it could be leveled to provide a runway like those seen on massive aircraft carriers. Once he had the plan, he sent it to Lord Mountbatten. After reading the proposal and considering it, Mountbatten passed the plan on to Sir Winston Churchill, who was enthusiastic about the idea of a warship made of ice. In early 1942, Bernal and Pike recruited Max Ferdinand Perutz to help them determine whether or not an iceberg would be big enough to withstand Atlantic conditions during construction. Perutz came to the conclusion that a natural iceberg would have too small of a surface above the water for an airstrip, and that they were more prone to roll over. If it wasn't for the invention of Pikecrete, a mixture of wood pulp and water, the whole project would have been completely abandoned. Pikecrete was stronger than regular ice, it had a slower melting rate, and amazingly, it wouldn't sink. So the decision was made to build a large-scale model of the Pikecrete warship in Canada at Jasper National Park. Massive ice blocks were created for the project at Alberta's Lake Louise, and a small prototype was put together at Patricia Lake, weighing 1,000 tons and measuring 60 feet by 30 feet. Based on the success of their first model, they expected to have a functional ice warship by 1944. But cold flow had become a serious issue for the group, and it was determined that steel reinforcements were needed, causing the cost estimate to skyrocket. More issues like the problem of controlling and mounting a rudder over 100 feet high were never solved in the end, bringing Project Habakkuk to a halt in December 1943. The Habakkuk design received a hefty amount of criticism after the fact, since the large amount of wood pulp required for the warship was enough to affect paper production, and the proof of concept was further criticized in April 2009 when Adam Savage and Jamie Heineman recreated the design on their TV show Mythbusters, only for the Pike to start leaking only 20 minutes into their journey around Alaskan waters. This experiment proved that it's probably not a good idea to build a warship out of ice. Number 7. Crazy Woman's Fork. The 1865 Powder River Expedition was a massive U.S. military operation against the Sioux, Cheyenne, Lakota, and Arapaho tribes in Dakota and Montana. It's considered a giant failure due to its inability to intimidate Native Americans, despite them being successful in destroying an Arapaho village and establishing Fort Connor. On August 1, 1865, 675 soldiers, civilian teamsters, and Native American scouts led by Brigadier General Patrick E. Connor left Fort Laramie, Dakota Territory, to meet Colonel Nelson D. Cole and Lieutenant Colonel Samuel Walker's columns. Connor's group went north, and on the upper Powder River, Fort Connor was established later that same month. Another military leader, Captain Frank J. North of the Pawnee Scouts, was riding near the Crazy Woman's Fork near Powder River with some of his men on August 13. As soon as they noticed a group of Cheyenne warriors, they started a chase. During the pursuit, North was separated from his men, so the retreating warriors regrouped and made him their sole target. One of the Cheyenne injured North's horse, but unwilling to surrender, the captain used the animal as a barricade. From that position, he successfully fought off attackers until reinforcements arrived. One of the scouts from Fort Connor eventually found North and joined him. Shortly after, several other Pawnees showed up to fight off the Native American warriors, who left after many of them had been shot and wounded. The battle at Crazy Woman's Fork was just one of the many engagements that took place throughout the Powder River Expedition. Number 6. Black Hills. Led by Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer, the U.S. Army's Black Hills expedition began on July 2, 1874. With orders to travel to the Black Hills of South Dakota, Custer and his team left Bismarck, North Dakota, which at that time was Fort Abraham Lincoln in the Dakota Territory. The mission was to find a route to the southwest, investigate the prospects of gold mining, and look for locations to build a military fort. On July 22nd, Custer and his unit arrived in the Black Hills, with orders to return by August 30th. Following orders, the expedition team organized a campsite where the town of Custer was later built. At the same time, Colonel Custer and his military units looked for somewhere to build a fort, while civilians searched for gold. It's not exactly clear if a significant amount of the resource was ever found, but nonetheless, a gold rush ensued, in turn antagonizing the Sioux Native Americans who'd been promised that their sacred land would be protected. They signed a treaty proposed by the U.S. government, so when it wasn't upheld, they fought back to defend their land. As a result, Custer was killed by the Sioux during the Battle of Little Bighorn, which was a smaller battle amidst the Great Sioux War of 1876 and 1877 between the natives and the U.S. Number 5. Camp Century. History can sometimes be much stranger than science fiction. For example, the United States used to have an underground city called Camp Century in the North Pole. In all honesty, it looked like the rebel base on the planet Hoth from Star Wars. Camp Century was established back in 1959. It was originally used as a scientific post hundreds of feet beneath an iceberg in Greenland. From above, it resembled a mysterious pyramid covered in snow, but below the surface, it was ginormous. At one point, the base had a staff of 200 employees, and the facility was powered by a nuclear reactor. It was a bona fide underground city, complete with a chapel, a gym, shops, a library, and a movie theater. But as the saying goes, all good things must come to an end. And soon after being built, the base was snatched from science and started being used by the U.S. military. The military used Camp Century to test out their new weaponry. The base was also once a preliminary camp for the infamous Project Iceworm, whose goal was to create a network of nuclear missile launch sites that would be able to withstand a strike. Thankfully, the project was canceled in 1966 due to unstable ice conditions. This is all according to declassified documents released in 1996. The camp functioned until 1967, when Greenland's shifting ice caps made habitation at the base impossible. As a result, Camp Century was abandoned, and the underground city was eventually crushed under the weight of snow. Have you ever heard of this expedition? Let us know in the comments, and subscribe if you're enjoying the video. Number 4. Alexandria Expedition of 1807. The 1807 Alexandria Expedition, sometimes referred to as the Fraser Expedition, was an attempt by the British to capture the Egyptian city of Alexandria during the Anglo-Turkish War. And when we say it was an attempt, it's because the mission was a complete failure. It was launched to gain a base of operations against the French and Ottoman empires in the Mediterranean Sea. It was all part of a larger strategy against the Ottoman-French alliance of Selim III, the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire between 1789 and 1807. Even though Alexandria was briefly occupied and captured, later attempts to proceed inland were rebuffed, resulting in the British forces being defeated twice in battles at Rashid, the port city of the Nile. These defeats caused the deaths of over 900 officers and soldiers, many of whom were taken prisoner. The captured British troops were marched to Cairo like cattle between rows of stakes where hundreds of severed heads belonging to their slain comrades were showcased. Those that weren't killed were either sold into slavery or condemned to hard labor. The leftover British forces were forced to retreat to Alexandria, where they stayed since they were unable to gather supplies. Then, Viceroy Muhammad Ali, the Ottoman Albanian governor at the time and de facto ruler of Egypt, used the British prisoners and the deserted army as a bargaining tool. In the end, his tactic worked, and British commanders were forced to halt any further operations in Egypt. Again, the British were forced to embark their transports and leave the country, having not accomplished anything they set out to do. In reality, all the expedition did was help unify the people behind Muhammad Ali and convince the British government to fully support Egypt, staying with the Ottoman Empire. Number 3. The China Relief Expedition. In order to rescue European nationals, U.S. citizens, and others during the later years of the Boxer Rebellion, an anti-Christian uprising, the China Relief Expedition was undertaken by the United States Armed Forces in China between 1898 and 1901. It was part of a multinational military effort called the Eight-Nation Alliance. The U.S. contributed many troops to the effort to relieve the foreign legations in Beijing and to besiege the Boxer militia who wanted to remove foreign imperialism inside the country. But toward the end of the expedition, the U.S. military's focus changed from rescuing foreign and U.S. nationals to suppressing rebellions. And by 1902, the Boxer militia had been effectively controlled in the capital of the People's Republic of China. Number 2. Russia's discovery of Siberia. At the end of the 16th century, Siberia entered Russian history fairly late. The official Russian expedition into the frozen wasteland we now call Siberia started in 1581, when Yermak Timofeyevich led a scouting team across the Ural Mountains, later defeating the forces of the Khanate of Sibir, the indigenous Turkish-speaking people that inhabited the steppes and forests of western Siberia. The paths of the Slavic warriors could have reached Siberia earlier, but as Russian settlements expanded close to the land beyond the Ural Mountains, exploration into the uncharted territory became more and more essential to securing Russia's eastward expansion. Tsar Ivan the Terrible provided the catalyst for Russia to extend its borders. He pursued the Golden Horde's remaining members across Eurasia, which simply means he sought control of the land under the rule of a Khan. In 1551, Ivan sacked Kazan, and he did the same thing in 1557 to Astrakhan. But the rest of the region in the western part of Siberia was still being controlled by the heirs of Genghis Khan. The wide territory from the middle of the Ural Mountains to the Ob River was held by Khan Kachum. So in a 3-day battle, Yermak Timofeyevich's troops defeated Kachum's army in October 1582. And it was this victory that essentially opened the gates to the rest of Siberia for Russia. Number 1. Polar Bear Expedition. The U.S. Army's 85th Division, which was mostly made up of men from Wisconsin and Michigan, finished its training during the summer of 1918 at Fort Custer and then went overseas to England. While some of the division was getting ready to enter the fighting in France, about 5,000 troops from the 339th Infantry and support units were given Russian equipment and weapons before setting sail for Archangel in Russia, situated about 600 miles from Moscow. In early September, when U.S. troops reached their destination, they met up with an international force commanded by the British, who'd been sent to northern Russia for reasons that oddly were never made known. Whatever the purpose of the intervention was, the force was seeking a fight with the Bolsheviks, who'd taken control of Moscow and Petrograd the previous winter. Fighting happened from 1918 to 1919 and was concentrated in 6 areas scattered across Archangel Province in a sort of semicircle. The American troops struggled with morale during these battles, wondering why they were still participating in combat when the war with Germany had already wrapped up. But in April of 1919, a new American commander arrived in Archangel with orders for his men to withdraw from the country. And a few months later, British troops withdrew as well. But the anti-Bolshevik government they'd left behind held control of the city for years until February 1920. Veterans of the campaign in Detroit held their first official reunion in 1922, which is when they formed the Polar Bear Association with the goal to perpetuate the memory of their Russian expedition. And this is how the campaign earned its name, the Polar Bear Expedition. If you were in the military and you were told to go on a secret expedition to explore mysterious ancient tunnels beneath the US, would you be able to keep it under wraps, or would you have to tell someone about it? Let us know in the comments down below.
Number 6. The Flying Fox. If you've ever wanted to live the high life like a king on the seas, then you might want to check out the Flying Fox. For a measly $4 million per week, you can charter this 446-foot behemoth, which happens to be the world's largest and most expensive yacht, for rent. The Flying Fox was built by Lürssen, a German shipyard known for creating some of the most impressive yachts in the world. The yacht was designed by Espen Oino, who gave it a sleek exterior with 2 helipads, a pool, a movie theater, an elevator, and even underwater lights. The interior was furnished by Mark Berryman, who used neutral colors and materials to make a cozy, inviting atmosphere. The yacht can hold up to 22 guests in 11 cabins, including a massive owner's apartment that has its own library and his and her bathrooms. Guests can enjoy a variety of activities on board, like relaxing in the 2-deck spa, working out in the gym, getting pampered in a beauty salon, or watching movies in the cinema. The ship also has a hospital with a decompression chamber just in case someone gets hurt. The Flying Fox is not only a floating palace, but it also holds a flying one. The yacht carries an Airbus H-155 helicopter worth about $10 million. The helicopter can land on either of the 2 helipads, which can accommodate the largest helicopters currently on the market. The ship also has a beach club and several swim platforms where guests can access water toys stored in the garage. The Fox is owned by Dmitry Kamenchik, a Russian billionaire who made his fortune in airport construction. He bought the vessel back in 2019 for $400 million. The purchase replaced his previous 239.5-foot yacht. Kamenchik is not the only celebrity who's enjoyed the ship. In 2021, Beyoncé and her family spent some time on board the Fox. So if you have a spare $4 million lying around your house and you want to experience the ultimate luxury vacation, you might want to think about booking the Flying Fox for your next trip. But hurry up, this yacht is in high demand and you don't want to miss your chance. Just remember to pack light. You don't need much since everything you could ever want is already on board. Would you ever rent this yacht if given the opportunity? Let us know at the end of the video. Number 5. The Azzam. Have you ever felt like something was missing from your life? Perhaps something big, shiny, and ridiculously expensive? Something that makes you feel like the king of the world, or at least the ruler of Abu Dhabi? Well, look no further than the Azzam yacht, the world's longest and most extravagant private motor yacht ever. The Azzam is a whopping 590 feet long, which is longer than 4 Boeing 747s or 18 blue whales. It has a beam of 68 feet and a draft of 14 feet, which means it can cruise through shallow waters at over 37 miles an hour, leaving other yachts completely in its dust or spray. It has a luxurious interior designed by Christophe Leone. It can accommodate 36 guests comfortably and 60 crew members who can enjoy amenities like a main salon, a mini submarine, a missile defense system, and a bulletproof master suite. Because you never know when pirates or paparazzi could attack. The Azzam was built by Lürssen Yacht, a German shipyard that specializes in custom-made mega yachts. It took them only 3 years to finish this project, which is a record time for such a huge vessel. The cost was estimated at $600 million, which is more than the entire GDP of some countries. But hey, money is no object when you're Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan, President of the United Arab Emirates and the owner of this ship. He commissioned the yacht for his father, Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, who was the founding father of the UAE and an overall visionary leader. The Azzam is not available for charter, and it is also not listed for sale, because once you have the best, you don't settle for less. The yacht is usually docked at Khalifa Port in Abu Dhabi, where it attracts admirers from all over the world. Sometimes it sails to other destinations like Spain or France, where it causes traffic jams and major security headaches. The yacht is a symbol of power, prestige, and pride for both its owner and his country. It is also a symbol of excess, waste, and inequality. So if you ever feel like splurging on something that will make you happy, but also hated by many, consider buying the Azzam yacht. It is the ultimate status symbol for the super rich or super bored. Just don't forget to bring your sunscreen, your passport, and a couple personal bodyguards. Number 4, the Dilbar. Unless you have a spare 600 million lying around, you'll probably never get to experience a ship like the Dilbar, the world's largest and most expensive super yacht. The Dilbar is owned by Alisher Usmanov, a Russian billionaire who made his fortune in the mining, telecom, and internet industries. He named the yacht after his mother, which is sweet but also a bit weird. The Dilbar is a beast of a boat. It measures 512 feet in length and 79 feet wide. It can hold more weight than the Eiffel Tower and can accommodate up to 40 guests and 80 crew members. It has 2 helipads, a swimming pool, a spa, and even a garage for Usmanov's collection of luxury cars. The yacht's also very fast and powerful. It has a top speed of 26 miles an hour and a range of over 18,000 nautical miles. It also has a diesel-electric propulsion system that generates 30,000 kilowatts of power, enough to light up a small city. The Dilbar is a stunning example of engineering and design that showcases Usmanov's vast wealth. But it's also a huge waste of money that could definitely be used for better purposes. Think of how many schools, hospitals, or charities he could have funded with $600 million, or even how many pizzas you could buy, or how many puppies you could adopt. The Dilbar is a dream come true for Usmanov, but a nightmare for the environment. It's a super yacht that only the super rich can afford and enjoy, and in the grand scheme of things, not very fun at all. Which amenity would you first visit on the Dilbar? Let us know after the video's over and subscribe while you're at it. Number 3, the Eclipse. Did you know that there's a yacht bigger than a football field, with more rooms than a hotel, costing more than a small country? The Eclipse yacht is owned by Roman Abramovich, the Russian billionaire with the most iconic and luxurious super yachts in the whole world. The Eclipse was built by Blom and Voss of Hamburg, Germany, and delivered to Abramovich back in 2010. It measures about 533 feet in length, which makes it the 3rd longest yacht after the Azzam and the Fulk Al Salama. 24 guest cabins, 2 swimming pools, many hot tubs, disco hall, and 2 helicopter pads are among a few of its amenities. It also has a mini submarine that can dive down to 160 feet, 3 launch boats, and a built-in missile detection system. The yacht can hold up to 36 guests and 70 crew members. The Eclipse was designed by Terence Disdale, also did the interior design work. The yacht has an elegant exterior with a white hull. The interior is modern and minimalist with neutral colors and natural materials. The yacht also has an anti-paparazzi system that uses lasers to detect and ruin any unwanted photos taken by prying cameras. The Eclipse cost around $700 million to build, but that's not all that goes into running this ship. The annual cost of the yacht is estimated at between $50 to $70 million. This price includes fuel, maintenance, crew salaries, insurance, and other expenses. That means that Abramovich spends more on his yacht in 1 year than most people earn in their entire lifetime. The yacht is not available for public charter, so don't get your hopes up on ever setting foot on board. The only way to get invited is to be friends with Abramovich or one of his exclusive guests. The Eclipse travels to various destinations around the world, but every winter it visits St. Martin in the Caribbean to pick up guests. The yacht then travels to Abramovich's home on nearby St. Bart's, where he hosts lavish parties and get-togethers. So there you have it. Brief introduction to the Eclipse yacht, one of the most amazing and extravagant super yachts in existence. If you ever see it sailing by, don't forget to wave and smile. Maybe Abramovich will notice you and invite you on board for a drink. Realistically though, probably best not to get your hopes up. In your opinion, how much money is too much to spend on a super yacht and keep it maintained? Number 2, the History Supreme. Have you ever dreamed of owning a super yacht made of solid gold and platinum, with a T-Rex bone and a meteorite wall and even a diamond bottle? Well, you're not the only one, pal. There's a mysterious Malaysian businessman who allegedly bought a yacht just like this for a whopping $4.8 billion. The ship is called the History Supreme, and it's supposedly the most expensive and luxurious yacht ever. But before you get too jealous of this anonymous buyer, there's a catch. The History Supreme is probably not even real. That's right, this extravagant vessel is nothing but a huge hoax. No one has ever seen it, no one knows who actually owns it, and no one can even verify its existence. The History Supreme was said to have been designed by Stuart Hughes, a luxury goods designer who's known for adding diamonds and gold onto iPhones and iPads. He claimed that he used 100,000 kilograms of precious metals to cover almost every surface on the 98.5-foot-long yacht. He also said that he added features like a panoramic aquarium wall, master suite with platinum accents, and a wall made from genuine dinosaur bone shaved from a Tyrannosaurus rex fossil. Sounds impressive, right? Well, there are many reasons to doubt Hughes' claims. For one thing, he only put 4 photos of the supposed yacht on his website, and they look like very poorly edited images of another ship. He also never revealed the name of the buyer, which was speculated to be Robert Kwok, the richest man in Malaysia. But why would Kwok spend 1/3 of his fortune on a boat? And why would he keep it hidden from the public? The most likely explanation is that the History Supreme is a publicity stunt. Hughes may have made up the story to attract attention to his luxury products or to scam potential buyers. Either way, History Supreme is way too good to be true. So don't feel bad if you can't afford a yacht made of solid gold, neither can anyone else. And at number 1, Jeff Bezos' yacht. Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon and one of the richest people in the world, has a new toy, a $500 million sailing yacht named Koru. The yacht, which is the largest of its kind, has 3 masts, an on-deck pool, a movie theater, a mermaid figurehead that looks very similar to his fiancée Lauren Sanchez. But don't worry, he also has a 246-foot support vessel called Abandonment, carries a helicopter, jet skis, and even 45 staff members. Because you can never have too much of a good thing, right? Well, we wouldn't know, we don't have that kind of money. Koru, which means spiral in Maori, is supposed to be an eco-friendly ship that runs mainly on wind power. But that didn't stop Bezos from causing a controversy when he tried to sail it through a historic bridge site in the Netherlands. The bridge, known as De Hef, or Koningshaven Bridge, was built back in 1927 and is a national monument. Bezos wanted to take it apart to make room for his yacht's 229-foot mast. The locals were not exactly amused by this and threatened to throw rotten eggs at the boat. Eventually, Bezos backed down and had his yacht towed to another shipyard without its mast. Bezos has since been spotted enjoying his yacht with Sanchez in Mallorca, Spain, where he reportedly proposed to her with a whopping $10 million ring. The couple met back in 2018 and began an affair that led to Bezos' divorce from his wife of 25 years, Mackenzie Scott. Scott, who received a 4% stake in Amazon worth about $38 billion as part of the settlement, has since donated over $8 billion of her wealth to various charities. Bezos, on the other hand, spent his money on space travel, media properties, and, you guessed it, yachts. Some might say that Bezos' yacht is a symbol of his success and vision. Others might say that it's a sign of his arrogance. And that concludes our tour of some of the most amazing super yachts on the 7 seas. From luxurious amenities to cutting-edge technology, these vessels are truly the ultimate expression of wealth and high-class style. We hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new about the world of super yachting. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to leave a comment below to let us know which super yacht was your favorite and why. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.